testerosa mirode, in love me durosa.
In the late 1600s, the Spanish crown was keen on expanding its influence across what is now the southern United States. A critical part of that plan was Texas. The mission of San Francisco de las Tejas was founded in 1690 and was one of the very first European footholds in the region. But why Texas, and why here? I'm journalist Matt Pierce, and this is the Faces of Time podcast, Texas. This is a look at the history of Texas in a way that explores more than just a few key players and places. This is about how we connect with our past and what we can learn from it. In today's episode, we're going to explore one of the earliest threads of Texas history, the San Francisco de las Tejas mission. It's a name that doesn't always pop up in conversations about Texas history, but it's a story that's deeply woven into the fabric of this land, the state, and our people. By looking at the rise and fall of this mission, we can better understand the meeting of the two worlds, the Native American and the Spanish. We can also learn how this encounter not only shaped Texas, but the larger world that we live in today. So why Texas? The short answer is fear and opportunity. The Spanish were anxious about French encroachment on Louisiana. They knew that if they didn't establish a presence in this rich, untamed territory, somebody else would. Most notably, their rivals, the French. For the Spanish, building missions like San Francisco de los Tejas was a strategic move. It allowed them to claim the land for Spain and to spread Christianity among the local indigenous people, specifically the Caddo. This mission was supposed to be a bridge, a way to both spirituality and culturally transform the native peoples while securing Spanish dominance here in the region. But the importance of San Francisco de los Tejas doesn't just lie in its colonial ambitions. It also stands as one of the earliest examples of cultural encounters here in Texas. The mission wasn't just a place of worship or control. It was a space where different lives, different cultures met. Spanish friars and soldiers entered a world that they didn't fully understand. A world where the Caddo had their own complex structures, their own spiritual beliefs and traditions. What the Spanish saw was they called civilizing. But the Caddo viewed it in a very different lens. This was a tension that would shape the success and eventual failure of this mission. The establishment of San Francisco de los Tejas mission marked the beginning of a long and complex relationship. It was an often tragic one. This was between the Spanish settlers and the indigenous people of Texas. Initially, the Spanish friars saw the mission as a success. They were converting the local natives, offering them agriculture tools, and establishing what they thought was a peaceful, productive community. In reality, things were much more complicated. For one, the local indigenous people had little interest in abandoning their traditions. They engaged with the mission on their own terms, accepting certain Spanish gifts or knowledge when it suited them, but resting for more heavy-handed aspects of the conversion. The Spanish friars were often frustrated by this, but it was a reality that they couldn't easily change. As the seasons passed, crops failed, disease spread, and tension rose between the friars and the local population. The Spanish saw their grand vision of Texas slipping away. By 1693, just 3 years after the mission was established, it was abandoned. It was a symbolic defeat for Spain's efforts to dominate Texas. But this was not the end of the mission's story. San Francisco de los Tejas would later be reestablished, and more missions would follow in Texas, each building on the lessons learned from this early encounter. The mission system in Texas would ultimately lay the groundwork for the state's later colonization and the tensions that played out there at San Francisco de los Tejas between the colonizers and the indigenous peoples. This was a war between faith and force, and it would reverberate through Texas for centuries. I want you to imagine with me waking up as a friar at San Francisco de los Tejas. It's early morning, around 5 a.m., and the light is just beginning to break over the dense East Texas pine forest. You sleep on a single straw mattress in a small, drafty room. The cold morning air bites at your skin as you rise to start your day. You put on your rough wool robe and tie the simple cord around your waist, saying a quick prayer as you prepare for the day ahead. As a priest, your primary task is to bring Christianity to the indigenous people of the area. But this isn't an easy mission, is it? You speak very little of their language, though you've been trained to communicate through gestures and simple words. It's a frustrating process. You think often about your home in Spain, the beautiful churches, the orderly cities, and you can't help but compare it to the remote and rugged outpost that you're in today. After morning prayers, you make your way to the small chapel. It's built from wood and mud, bricks. It's a simple cross that rises above the forest. There's a quiet place here in the morning, but you know the day ahead will be busy. You'll spend hours teaching indigenous children, trying to explain Christian concepts that even some of your fellow priests struggle to articulate. You'll check on crops that you've planted with the caddo, hoping that this season's harvest will fare better than the last. Every day there's a sense of uncertainty. Will there be enough food? Will there be enough resources? Will the caddo finally commit to the Christian faith, or will they continue their old traditions? At midday, you'll walk the outskirts of the mission where the caddo live in their traditional homes. Smoke from their fires curls into the air. You see women cooking, children playing, and men working with their tools. You realize how little you truly understand about their world. You're supposed to be their spiritual guide, but it often feels as if they're the ones teaching you. They're teaching you survival, patience, and about the limits of your power. In the evening, as the sun sets, you gather with your fellow priests for dinner. A simple meal of beans and corn, maybe some dried meat. You talk quietly about the day's challenges, but there's always a shared sense of purpose, even if the path ahead is unclear. After a final prayer, you head to your bed, the sounds of the great East Texas forest echoing through your ears at night. You wonder if tomorrow will be any different, if the seeds of your faith that you've tried to plant in this new world will ever take root. And as you drift to sleep, you think of the land around you, the people that you've come to know, the mission that you're trying to build, not just for God, but for Spain. In this modern Texas, but it's there, quietly influencing our state's culture and our history, even the politics that lives today. The system that the mission brought to Texas was a precursor to later colonization efforts, setting up a pattern that would define Texas for centuries, even into this modern era. The tensions between the indigenous people and the European settlers, which played out in the mission, foreshadowed the conflicts that would define much of today's Texas history. Things like land disputes, cultural clashes, and even displacement of native populations. Somewhat we see that today with the migration of people from state to state. But there's more to it than that. The story of San Francisco de los Tejas is a reminder of the resilience of the indigenous people here in Texas. Despite the Spanish efforts to impose their religion and way of life on the Caddo, like many other native groups, they adapted to these challenges in ways that preserve their own identity. This story is part of a larger, often overlooked narrative of resilience and resistance in Texas history. We can still see the echoes of the mission in the way that Texas grapples with its diverse cultural heritage today. Blending the Hispanic and indigenous traditions is deeply rooted in the state's history, and the understanding of the missions helps us understand how cultural threads were first woven together. A lot that we can learn from this rise and fall of San Francisco de los Tejas. It reminds us of the frailty of human efforts to impose control on land and people that they don't fully understand. The Spanish priests and soldiers sometimes came here with grand ambitions, but they were humbled by the reality of life on the Texas frontier. The story of this mission is one of persistence, but also one of failure. And through that failure, we see the importance of humility, respect, and adaptation when the different cultures collided. But perhaps the most important lesson that we can take away from San Francisco de los Tejas is the value of human connection. The Spanish and the Caddo, the Hacine, didn't always understand each other, and they often worked at different purposes, different reasons. But they also shared moments of cooperation and learning. In a world where division and misunderstanding are still very common, the story of San Francisco de los Tejas shows us the importance of striving for connection, even when that connection seems impossible. Today, the site of San Francisco de los Tejas seems remote, tucked away in the East Texas woods, but it's a vital part of Texas history, a reminder of the challenges and the hopes that shaped this land. The echoes of the past still echo, and they're connecting us to a time when two cultures collided. The new world began to take shape. Thank you for joining me on this journey through time. I'm Matt Pierce. This has been the Phases of Time podcast, Texas series. Join me next time as we uncover the forgotten histories that continue to shape the Texas that we know and love today.